My name is Holt, and this is His Story. So I knew that I was called to ministry when I was 10 years old. I had a real encounter with the Lord, and it was at an Assembly of God church camp. Now, I was a Baptist kid, and so I went to this church camp and was just encountered by the presence of God, something that I never really experienced before. And all I can remember is laying there in the dirt. How I got in the dirt, I don't know. I don't know whether the power of God hit me or if I just decided to get him. I don't know what happened, but I remember laying face up, looking at the sky, and all I could say was, "I love you, Jesus." And in that moment, I knew that I was called to ministry. Now, from 10 years old to probably about 13, if you asked me what I was going to do with my life, that was it. I would tell you, I'm going to be a preacher. I'm going to be a pastor. I'm going to be in the ministry. That's what God's called me to do. But somewhere around 13, I realized there was a couple problems. One, I hated speaking in front of people. I had no idea how is God really going to use me when I can't even get through a speech class. In fact, I got through college speech because there was enough written work that I could get a C. And the other issue was I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I didn't feel like pastors made any money. They couldn't do what they wanted to do, and they just couldn't have any fun. And so I decided I wanted to coach football or basketball. Well, really, at that age, I probably thought I was going to be in the NFL or the NBA until I realized that it was too short, too slow, too small. And so fast forward, I don't know, 20 years, meeting my wife and graduating from college and going into the corporate world, I was miserable in my job. I mean, I hated it. I was blessed. God was blessing us when we were serving him, and he was blessing us, but I was miserable and I was making everyone in my family miserable. And one day I came to my wife and I said, "Look, I've got to do what God's called me to do, and he's called me to ministry." In 2008, I was working at Tyson corporate office. Went on my first mission trip to India. Now, to really understand how big a deal that was, you have to understand that even when I surrendered to the call of God in my life, I said, "Okay, Lord, I'll do what you call me to do. I'll preach, but I don't care if I ever leave the country. I don't care to go out of the country. I don't want to do missions. I'll just be right here." And in fact, I think I just want to be an itinerant minister. How about you just send me all over the country and I'll just make a lot of money and fly in jets, because that's the perception of what, big name pastors do or preachers do. So I went on my first mission trip, and it was just another one of those times where you look back and it's just a marker in your life, and God really does something powerful internally and awakens something in you that you never knew was there. Fly back on I believe on a Sunday night. And now that's about a 20-hour flight. I was gone for 13 days, lost 13 pounds because I didn't eat any of the food. Ate one time, got so sick that I just couldn't even stand up. And that's an interesting story because I was supposed to preach that day, and I was so sick I couldn't get out of bed. I was just laying there all day until it came time for me to preach. And about an hour before I'm laying there and I'm going back and forth with the Lord, like I can't even move. How am I going to preach? But then the person I was with, he said, "Well, I'll just take this one and you can do the next one." And the Holy Spirit just spoke to me and said, "This is why I sent you. You don't have to do it in yourself. Just trust me." And it's in that moment that I learned that when I can't do something, I'm probably in the best position to actually get it done, because then I can trust him. And so I completely trusted him. I said, "Okay, Lord." As soon as I walked up on the stage, I was supernaturally filled with energy and preached. And as soon as I sat down, I almost passed out. And it just taught me the value of just learning to trust him and rely on him no matter what, which would be a good lesson, because fly home on a Sunday, get up the next morning and go to work. extremely tired from the trip. Work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I get called into my boss's office. Now, I knew that there had been some layoffs going on. Tyson calls it fasting. That's an interesting way of putting it. And so my wife had actually called me to give me a heads up because she knew someone and they told her that my name was on the list because they were cutting middle management, and I had recently joined a group where I was in middle management. And so I knew that it was coming. And so when I went into his office and he starts telling me that they're gonna have to make some cuts here, they're gonna have to make some cuts there, and he's visibly upset about it. But I had the only way I can describe it is a supernatural peace. And so he's letting me go and he's tearing up and can't understand why I'm not shaken by it. And so I just explained to him, you know what, I appreciate it. I appreciate your care for me, but God's gonna take care of me, and I believe this is God opening a door for me to step into what he's called me to do. So leave there, go home, and then this is where the actual journey begins of really trusting God. Because it's one thing to say that you'll trust him when you got a job, when everything's going good, but when all that's taken away, then how do you walk that out? I remember a couple of days later, my wife had went to work, kids were in school. For some reason, I took a pillow and I went in and I laid in the kitchen on the tile floor. And I've got all of this emotion going on in my mind. And I remember on one hand thinking, we just lost half of our income. You know, I've got kids to feed, I've got a wife to support. And my wife was working, but you know, we're a 2-income family. And so I have that natural struggle going on, but yet the peace of God, which at the time I didn't understand, but the peace of God on the inside of me just telling me it's gonna be okay. And I'm laying there in the floor on my hands and knees, face buried in a pillow. And I just said, okay, Lord, I trust you. I trust you. You're going to accomplish what you want to accomplish through this situation. 6 months, we never missed a bill. Our kids never even knew that there was an issue because God always provided. Next step was I got a job at a company called SAI, another accounting job, another job I hated, but I knew that it was temporary. I knew there was a transition period, and eventually the Lord was going to open up what he wanted me to do. I think it was probably about 6 months, and then they started laying people off. And I knew that I was the lowest person on the list, and so I was probably going to get laid off. And they didn't really like me there anyway because I just did enough to get by because I hated my job. Got laid off there. And instead of it being something like, oh no, it's a time of worry, I was celebrating on the inside because I knew that, okay, something's about to break, something's about to open up, and I'm gonna step into what God called me to do. And I was excited about it, but then at the same time, there's still some apprehension. Well, it wasn't very long and some things opened up and I stepped into full-time ministry. This was just probably 6 months prior, I was without a job. But in that time, I learned to trust God as my provider. And so really the whole process of encountering him at 10 years old, running from the call of God on my life, and to the point that I was so miserable that I had to surrender, then rapid doors opening and closing and God really maneuvering me into where he wanted me to be. It was all part of the journey to get us to where we are now, which is pastoring Ignite Church. And so I look back and see the seeds of Ignite planted as a 10-year-old. Literally never thought of it like that. Wow. That's literally the first time that I've connected the dots. That as a 10-year-old laying in the dirt, encountering the Holy Spirit for the first time, that he was planting the seed of what he would birth. Wow, some 20 plus years later. Okay. I don't know where to go from there. All right. I hope it's not too hard to edit.